the biggest mistake I made was I picked some people. I picked some great people, but you don't think about that. I picked some people that I shouldn't have picked. I picked a few people that I shouldn't have picked.
Now, Kamala Harris weren't very comfortable, was she, talking about mistakes when Anderson Cooper, in that softball interview, asked her, what mistakes have you made? She said, I think my biggest mistakes is I like listening to the advice of a large team that are around me of experts. That's a literal definition of aristocracy, and technocracy, but that's just a side note. That's a side note. Don't get caught up in that. When Rogan asked Trump about his mistakes, here are his answers. Now, let me know in the comments and chat, is this the kind of authenticity and integrity that you expect? And in a minute, what we'll look at is how, in this part of the conversation, what comes to the forefront, if you ask me, is the big challenge that any eventual Trump administration would be confronted with. How do you take on Big Pharma, the military-industrial complex, and globalism, not in its bureaucratic forms, which would be groups like the WHO and NATO, you can just tell them we're stopping funding you and we're not signing your treaties, but when it comes to Google, Raytheon, Boeing, Pfizer, BlackRock, let me know in the comments and chat, do you think Trump and the MAGA movement are going to take on that aspect of globalism? Let's start off looking at Rogan and Trump chatting about exactly that. Then we're going to move into this significant moment that will have been lost because of the nature of the coverage that's going on about the electoral cycle, that another $50 billion has been granted to Ukraine. And, Ukraine shouldn't be being annihilated by Russia. We all agree that. But we know there's also a complex history to how we found ourselves in this war and funding this war. Of that $50 billion, $20 billion of it is yours. So we're going to be getting to that and covering that. But first of all, here's Trump saying what his biggest mistake was. And ultimately, he says it's the people that he appointed. He was given bad advice. But what would a second Trump term look like? Will he be able to bypass that? Is he really going to be able to take on the true power that is masked by the institutions of democracy? Let's have a look at it.
And neocons?
Yeah, neocons, or bad people, or disloyal people, or
people that were just
people
bad,
that were into the
people got bad advice.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're reading about him a little bit today. A guy like Kelly, who is a bully, but a weak person. You know more about bullies than anybody probably around because you deal in a certain sport where the bullies are exposed very quickly.
Yeah.
But he's bad. Bolton was an idiot, but he was great for me because I'd go in with a guy like a John Bolton. John Bolton. A friend of mine called me up. I was picking Bolton, and he's a very smart guy. His name is Phil Ruffin. He's a very rich guy from Las Vegas. He's a great card player. He doesn't play cards, but he's a great player. He's just a natural. Got poker sense, right? The good old poker sense. And Phil Ruffin is a very, very wise kind of a guy, and one of the richest people around, and has had great success and understands people. So it was in that I was picking Bolton, or I picked Bolton. He called up. He said, "Don't pick him. Why? He's a bad guy." Now, he wasn't in politics at all. He's in various businesses. He said, "He's a bad guy. He's just, it always works out bad with that guy." And I said, "Oh, man, I wish you told me this 2 weeks ago. I already hired him. He's here." And he was right. But he was good in a certain way. He's a nut job. And every time I had to deal with a country, when they saw this whack job standing behind me, they said, "Oh, man, Trump's going to go to war with us." He was with Bush when they went stupidly into the Middle East.
He's still got the quality that sets him apart is that he sounds like a normal person. He's an extraordinary person, isn't he? He's a billionaire, but he's achieved in a variety of fields. But to talk like, "Oh, this guy's a nut job." When you hear someone talk like that, compared to the peculiar intonations of Kamala or Clinton, or even like Bush Senior, or certainly career politicians like Cheney, etc., you notice that he's talking in a way that's sort of recognizable. It's very unusual and it's extraordinary. So do you think, though, there might be more obviously there is more to running the United States of America than that? And in particular and specifically, rather than just the appointments that are made of, sort of hawkish figures like John Bolton, what the relationship's going to be like with Pfizer and other, like, for example, is Donald Trump saying, what we're going to do is we're going to ban lobbying as a profession. We're not going to bother with that. We're just going to form our own internal assessments of what policies to pursue when it comes to war or commercial interests in America. No, they're not going to do that, are they? They're going to continue to have lobbying. And are they going to continue to accept donations from massive corporations? I would imagine that they probably are. So what exists then in that particular institutional trend if that's not going to be disrupted? Do you hear what I'm saying? Because I've spoken to Bobby Kennedy about that particularly on this show. I've said, if you still have donations funding you, you're still vulnerable to that kind of inflection, aren't you? So let's have a look now at what's happening with the G7 and sending $50 billion to perpetuate the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia. And I say this because if Ukraine couldn't continue to fund that war, then they would have to come to terms with Russia, and they would not be favourable terms because Russia would be the victor. So I suppose what the G7 could be doing is saying, look, we're not going to fund the perpetuation of the war, but we are going to support Ukraine when it comes to the negotiation. That is a way out of it. But I mean, I can't be right, can I? I can't be right. I'm just some guy. I can't be right about this. Okay, let's have a look at that story.
The U.S. and its G7 allies are moving forward with a $50 billion loan package to help Ukraine fight Russia. The U.S. is contributing $20 billion in economic and military aid, but Congress still needs to give the go-ahead for the military part of that package. This aid will be vital for Ukraine as winter is on the horizon.
Okay, so this is the House Intel chief saying that the U.S. must consider direct military action if North Korean troops fight in Ukraine. So there's a potential for this thing to continue escalating, and it's interesting that this is a Republican saying that if North Korea join Russia, there will be a continuation of funding. So does that mean that even in the event of a Trump presidency, that you would still be funding that war? Let me know in the comments and chat what you think about that. So Mike Turner, the chair of the House Intelligence Committee, has called for the U.S. to consider direct military action if North Korean troops are sent to fight in Ukraine. If North Korean troops were to invade Ukraine's sovereign territory, the United States needs to seriously consider taking direct military action against the North Korean troops, Turner wrote on X. The war against free speech is in full swing. We are the vanguard, bravely fighting back. Rumble's the home of this channel, Stay Free, and a leader in defending the fundamental human right of free speech. They've joined X to sue a cartel of advertisers and ad agencies who conspired to block ad revenue from going to the platforms. Recently, they've launched Rumble Premium. This, I think, is going to be a game changer for all of us. It's an ad-free viewing experience with great perks for viewers and creators. Rumble Premium will give you the ability to dive into your favorite content on your mobile or desktop or smart TV and savor every uninterrupted second of my content. Why don't you upgrade to Rumble Premium today? Support my free speech and the free speech of other content creators on this platform. Please go to Rumble now, rumble.com/premium. And if you use the code BRAND, you'll save $10 and Rumble will be aware that our stream is creating great converts. So that's rumble.com/premium and do use the code BRAND to save $10. Anyway, there's a link there at the bottom of the screen now. We're posting it in the chat. Join up. The Ohio congressman also said if North Korean troops attack Ukraine from Russian territory, the US should support long-range Ukrainian strikes on Russian territory using NATO-provided missiles, which Russia has made clear risks nuclear war. Zelensky claimed that about 10,000 North Korean troops could enter the war. He's hyping up the threat to push the US and NATO to adopt his so-called victory plan, which calls for significant escalations in military support. Now, I don't think any of us want to see significant escalations in that conflict or any conflict. What we want is de-escalation, and peace indeed isn't part of the new purview that we should be adopting as an advancing species, that we want to bring about peace through communing rather than conflicting continually. Doesn't it seem a little martial, a little Stone Age, a little Neanderthal, that we're continuing to resolve territorial disputes through bloodshed and violence, particularly when there's a level of complexity in those territorial disputes that needs to be unpacked with, God, I don't know, philosophy, theology, rationalism, a whole variety of disciplines could be brought to bear on the complex wars that are playing out both in the Middle East and in Europe and could be escalating elsewhere also if we don't somehow disrupt this trend where crisis for ordinary people equals opportunity for powerful interests and institutions. An obvious example being the pandemic, which, whilst it might have been extremely punishing for small businesses of every variety, individuals of all descriptions, was incredibly beneficial when it comes to the massive wealth transfer that took place during that period. Now, one of the challenges if you reduce the size of the state, which I do believe is necessary, is who is it then that is going to control rampant corporatism and globalism, which is a significant part of the globalist machine. It's not just the state that is controlling us, it is the state in partnership with corporatism. So are we going to see genuine opposition to, let's just name some of the brands, who are the companies that benefit from Americans not being healthy again? Who are the interests that benefit from America being in perpetual war, in perpetual sickness? If you can name them, if you can identify their logos, then you can directly ask of your leaders, whether it were Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, shouldn't matter. What should matter is this: are you going to end war? Are you going to oppose the most powerful interests in the world, which we now know to be the nexus of interests that meet between corporatism and globalist bureaucracies? So yes, oppose NATO. Yes, refuse the WHO treaty. Yes, put America first. But that America has to be Americans, not American corporations that aren't really American. They're global. Because if you were to analyze and scrutinize at some length the way that perhaps, I don't know, Amazon, Alphabet, Apple, the AAAs pay taxes, I bet you would find some anomalies when compared to how you pay taxes. I bet you would find convenient loopholes. And when it comes to donating and congressmen and women owning stocks and shares in companies that they regulate, you would find some hypocrisies. And if those interests aren't opposed, then we haven't done the necessary job, have we? Well, that's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments and the chat.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more uncensored content where free speech can flourish, join our live stream. Click the link right here to watch the next video if you want to, or become a member of a growing movement. Download the Rumble app and you'll be informed every time we make a new piece of content. Stay free.